Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So you've purchased a Sunday custom lawn plan. Where to go from here, right? And so taking a step back, it's beneficial to consider what are we working with over the course of the season, right? What is the general schedule for the entire year? The first step with a Sunday custom lawn plan is lawn preparation. And I can't stress enough that this is a crucial component of the plan, right? And this is what is going to set you up for success. So included here is considering, were there any areas in previous seasons which have struggled? Okay. Are there any areas where you feel you may need to take a bit more of a comprehensive approach from a soil perspective, perhaps? Do we need to aerate that area? Do we need to top dress that area? Are there any areas where you feel the lawn may be a bit uneven and essentially the mower blade is removing too much grass during one cut and stressing the grass in that area? This is a great time just to ensure that we have a plan for the full year, so we're not stuck in the middle of the year trying to determine what's occurring with the lawn and how do I proceed. And this is why it's so crucial to consider the lawn as a dynamic system and not just a static system where we look to apply an herbicide or we look to apply fertilizer and then essentially just allow the lawn to be, right? We want to truly consider, how is the lawn, what's interacting with the lawn? What are the factors? And once we're able to do so, we'll be better prepared to address any changes which may occur. So for example, if there's an area which starts to brown a bit in the summertime and you feel that the soil may be a bit compacted, maybe we need to consider adjusting our watering schedule in that area, right? Because the compacted soil could be essentially preventing that water from draining properly and resulting in that area remaining a bit too moist. So this is the step that I believe, if again, stressing again, this is the step that I would truly focus on at the beginning of the year, just to ensure that we have a better understanding of how to proceed. Secondly, from weed control, depending on which bundle you purchase, you may have received some of our herbicides. And if you did not, no worries, they are available on our website as a separate purchase, but we'll discuss our herbicides in a bit more detail in the upcoming slide. Thirdly, patching and seeding, an additional critical component of the custom lawn plan, essentially just ensuring that we're maintaining that nice thick lawn and minimizing the amount of bare soil. Fourthly, fertilizing, the true bread and butter, if you will, the Sunday custom lawn plan, what you'd expect from your traditional lawn care program. What we offer, or the product which you'll be utilizing, are the little nutrient pouches which you have received. So if you have questions about what is the plan that I just purchased, I would consider the fertilizer as the basis, and then the additional products as add-ons or extras on top of that. And lastly, maintaining. So just as crucial as the lawn preparation stage was, maintenance is critical as well, right? And so this is a step where I focus on not only watering and mowing over the course of the year, but also adjusting your watering schedule if needed, right? If it ends up being a very wet spring, we can adjust our schedule. Potentially sharpening your mower blade if you realize partway through the season that you have a dull mower blade and you're essentially tearing at those grass blades. Additionally, if over the course of the year you realize that we may need to adjust the schedule a bit, perhaps an application needs to be delayed, we can do so. So this is a step where I would think of the lawn preparation step is truly setting you up for success, and then the maintenance stage is going to be more so putting some of these actions in place and being able to adjust to account for any factors which may arise. Transitioning to our fertilizer pouches, again, the key component of the custom lawn plan, right? In terms of, if you're asking which product is the fertilizer, it is these nutrient pouches, right? And so the first best practice, or one of the best practices that we highlight, is the application temperature should fall between 50 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So what this means is that if it is currently 30 degrees out, we recommend not applying any of our nutrient pouches containing nitrogen. More on this in just a moment. And if it's above 85 degrees, let's say it's 100 degrees currently, then again, we would wait to apply the nutrient pouch. Now, there are certainly situations where we may be able to account for that, right? So for example, if it's 100, going to be 100 during the day, we might be able to apply that pouch in the early morning while it's a bit cooler. But I wouldn't rely on this as the end all be all requirement for applying a pouch, right? There are two other factors which I would consider. The first being, is the grass actively growing? If the grass is currently dormant, I would not apply a nutrient pouch. Additionally, if the grass is stressed, I would not apply a nutrient pouch. So those are the two factors which I would consider before proceeding to this factor. Considering, is the grass essentially going to be able to benefit from this pouch, or is it actively growing? And if I apply this pouch right now, is the grass essentially, do I want to be encouraging growth with this grass? Is it not stressed? Secondly, apply when no rain is forecasted for the following 24 hours. So since the products are liquid, right, we want to make sure that we're not diluting them. So if there's rain in the forecast within the next day, I would hold on to that application. If it sprinkles lightly after applying one of our pouches, I wouldn't be as concerned, right? But just keep in mind that we just want to be mindful of both natural precipitation and then also watering after applying one of our pouches, and just making sure we're not essentially diluting. Thirdly, during high heat conditions, this is assuming that the grass is healthy, right? So if the grass is currently drought stressed, we wouldn't be looking to apply a nutrient pouch, since it fails to meet that second factor we discussed earlier, that the grass must be unstressed, right? But assuming grass is healthy, high heat conditions, we would essentially recommend watering lightly before applying the pouch. One of the questions we do receive is essentially, well, I'm hooking the pouch up to my hose and I'm using water to dilute the pouch. Do I need to water it, or is that essentially a watering? Unfortunately, we don't expect the pouch to take between roughly 15 minutes or so to apply. So that generally is going to be a shorter watering or shallower watering than we prefer for your turf grass. So essentially, I wouldn't rely on the application as a watering session. Instead, water lightly, apply the pouch, and then wait at least a day or so before watering again under high heat conditions.
Will, and just before you touch on that last bullet point here, how does Sunday manage or handle situations where there are restrictions, let that be because of the heat for watering restrictions, or another case that we see often in some areas of the country is there's fertilizer blackout dates, so no nitrogen from X month to X month. Does Sunday keep those things or take those situations into account when adjusting the plan?
Really good question. So keep in mind that when we build your application schedule, it is flexible, right? And so what I mean by that is, if for whatever reason a pouch does need to be delayed, we're going to be able to incorporate it at some point over the course of the season, right? And so that's a point which, again, I can't stress enough, that if you're ever unsure of whether or not to apply a pouch, you're not sure if the grass is stressed, or you're heading into extreme heat, just hold on to that pouch for now, and we can incorporate it at a later date. So in terms of building out the application schedule from a fertilizer ban perspective, again, it may differ depending on your current plans. Some customers, you may receive a pouch of ours which does not contain any nitrogen, so you wouldn't be violating the nitrogen phosphorus blackout date restriction. Or there are other products that we offer, so Pet Patch and Lawn Aid, for example, which don't contain any nitrogen, and we'd be able to discuss incorporating them as well. So yes, our plans do account for fertilizer blackout dates and for extreme heat, but keep in mind that if there are any situations which do arise over the course of the year, we can hold on to those pouches and incorporate them at a later date once the grass is healthier, or when conditions allow. And lastly, in regards to mowing, we do actually recommend mowing before an application to essentially open up that grass canopy and increase the absorption of the pouch contents. But after an application, we recommend waiting at least 48 hours before mowing, just to essentially make sure that the pouch is absorbed. Transitioning more so to a weed control perspective. So generally from a conventional perspective, you would apply a pre-emergent at the beginning of each season to prevent weed seeds from germinating, right? The thought is you rely on this pre-emergent, you no longer have to deal with weeds, right? This chemical is essentially preventing the weed seeds from germinating, and you have a weed-free lawn. What is occurring underneath the soil, however, is there's a seed bank accumulating of these weed seeds, right? So these seeds are not going anywhere. They're remaining within the soil. So essentially over time, this will continue to accumulate. And once that pre-emergent is no longer applied, there will be a period where you have to essentially exhaust that seed bank. So instead of applying a pre-emergent, Sunday instead considers why these weeds are present, right? Weeds are typically going to be an indicator of some factor preventing the grass from being able to take hold, or just essentially an environmental factor, right? For example, with nut sedge, typically we see nut sedge in compacted soils or with soils with excess moisture, so we may look to aerate or top dress the area. But I'm stealing the thunder for Andrea and Ivana and in their upcoming webinar, so I'll stop there, but keep an eye out for their Dealing with Weeds webinar. But this is a key difference between Sunday and your traditional approach, right, where we do not offer a pre-emergent and we instead look to modify the environment. And in doing so, for any weeds which do appear, we do offer our 2 spot treatments, Dandelion Doom and Weed Warrior, to essentially prevent that seed bank from ever accumulating, right? We never allow it to accumulate to a point where we're going to need to exhaust it over the course of the season, right? We're essentially maintaining it or keeping on top of it over the course of the year. With Sunday, this is common with the majority of our practices, right? And so why apply a chemical across the entire lawn, which you may not even need, right? It may be possible if you do have weeds, that there's only one area which we may be able to modify the environment. You no longer have to apply a chemical to prevent these weeds from appearing, both this year and in future years. So just keep in mind, this is a key question that comes up, and we're always happy to chat this through. In terms of best practices, we do recommend applying our herbicides on a sunny day. Again, since they're liquid, not applying if there's rain in the forecast within the following 24 hours, applying when the weeds look healthy, since stress weeds can actually react, or herbicides may not be as effective against stressed weeds, as counterintuitive as that sounds. Apply the leaves liberally. So since our herbicides are not blanket treatments, right? They're only spot treatments. We just want to make sure we're essentially concentrating the application on the specific weeds and really ensuring that we're saturating the weed's leaves. Know the age of the weed. We really want to try to remove the weeds as soon as possible. Our herbicides are going to be more effective against young weeds when compared to established weeds. And in regards to seeding, if you are looking to seed, we recommend waiting at least 24 hours after a Dandelion Doom application before seeding, or at least 5 days after a Weed Warrior application. If you're cut on time, though, you can always essentially flush the area with a deep watering or wait for a good rainstorm and then seed afterwards. Next, transitioning to our soil test. A key component of the custom lawn plan, the first point here is collect it as soon as possible, right? It does take a few weeks after the results to be processed, so just to ensure that your plan is updated as soon as possible, we do recommend submitting it the earlier the better. So based on your soil test, your plan will update. So keep in mind that we'll be able to have an understanding of your specific pH in your soil, the organic matter content, your cation exchange capacity, or how able essentially your soil is to retain nutrients, nutrient deficiencies, soil salt level, and then also discuss actions to consider taking, such as top dressing, liming, and applying gypsum. So with the soil test, keep in mind that your plan will automatically be updated if we detect a nutrient deficiency, but some of these other factors are more useful when chatting with a yard advisor or when completing research yourself in terms of how to improve your soil or to have a better understanding, right? So we sometimes receive questions of, well, I submitted a soil test. Can you tell the number of weeds I have based on that? Unfortunately, no. Can you tell my grass type from my soil sample? Fortunately, no. So just keep in mind, great tool, but I really think of it as a two-part resource. One being useful in terms of updating your plan from a nutrient perspective, and then the other part being more so as a tool for interacting with the yard advisors or having a better understanding of your lawn for yourself.
And right, as we're talking about the soil test, well, we did have a couple questions come in related to this topic. So first of all, you talked about, for example, lime application, but would you be able to give us more specifics about the timing? Now I know the environment has a lot to do with it. So just a general guide or a general recommendation, because I know our order of operations webinar will cover this in more detail, but something you can share with us right now on what's the best timing?
Yeah, great question. So with lime, right, our primary factors to consider are making sure that the grass is not currently dormant, right? So we want to make sure it's actively growing, and then also just making sure we're not adding lime before heading into a stressful environment, right? So for example, I wouldn't add lime if it's forecasted that you're going to have extreme heat for the following several weeks, right? So generally, I would expect springtime and fall time being the optimal times generally. And if we can time it where essentially it can be watered in by a good rainstorm, then that would be optimal.
Thank you, Will. And then an additional question is, how often do we recommend for the soil to be retested? And does Sunday send a new soil test for every year?
Great question. So you will receive a soil test with your first box, right, for your first season. And then from there, some of these soil properties are going to be very difficult to change, right, or to alter it. So for example, pH. If you have a very acidic soil, we're most likely not going to be able to adjust that pH to a desirable range per se with one lime application, right? So from that perspective, some of these values I wouldn't be as concerned about needing a new soil test each year, right? We will not offer or will not send you a new soil test each season. Essentially, your original soil test will influence your future plans. But keep in mind that we'll still be able to rely on the test results to essentially chat about how to proceed, right? And if there are any actions to take, what the optimal range would be, essentially the time scale, and proceed from there. And lastly, in terms of resources, our website. So with each custom lawn plan subscription, you have access to your My Plan page, which includes recommended application dates for each nutrient pouch. Keep in mind that these are only recommended, are our recommendations, right? So if an application needs to be delayed, no worries, we can incorporate them when conditions allow. Additionally, instructions are included for the pouches. And then lastly, a checklist. So you can see here that I missed out on a couple of applications last year, and I'm reminded of this each time I log in. But this is a great tool to be able to see, essentially track your progress, right? And be able to see, oh, yep, I missed this application. I need to work this in at a different date. And you can chat with the yard advisor then about how to do so. Additionally, on your page is your lawn data page. So included here is excellent data influencing your plan, ranging from your expected growing season, your regional soil profile, temperature data. But keep in mind that the majority of this data is going to be an average, right? So from a temp perspective or growth potential perspective, this is a historical average. So if it is an extremely warm year, right, then I wouldn't expect that average to fluctuate all that much. But this is still extremely useful information for us to have a general understanding of what we expect for your region. Similarly, for your regional soil profile, this is based on a national database, right? So this isn't for your specific soil. This is a question that comes up occasionally regarding, well, on my lawn data page, it shows that my soil is 90% sand, but I feel that my soil is very compacted. Do I need to aerate or top dress? Well, again, this is what we would expect the native soil to be, right? So for your specific lot, there are situations where your soil will not reflect what we would expect to be there per se. So for example, new built lawns, the top layer of soil is typically removed, and it can lead to soil structural issues. But it is still beneficial for us to understand what essentially we expect would have been there, right? And then we can proceed from there of how to adjust your specific lawn. In terms of your actual soil, however, this is where the soil test comes into play, right? And this is why we place such a heavy emphasis on ensuring that we receive those soil samples as soon as possible once you receive your first box, right? To make sure that your plan is being updated for the remainder of the season and forward. Our blog, The Shed, includes articles ranging from how to complete certain practices, such as auditing your sprinkler system, to how to select a plant for your backyard garden. Our YouTube page provides videos detailing how to use some of our products, product overviews, conversations with our very own Dr. Frank Rossi from my alma mater, Cornell University. Frank's the head of our science team and is a key component of our team here. The yard advising team works quite closely with our science team. Essentially, we meet over the course of the season just to be able to chat about what we're seeing throughout the country and what to keep an eye out for. As we've mentioned, our webinars, this is our schedule for the upcoming month, a new venture, but extremely excited. Later this week, we'll have our lawn care basics webinar, which will discuss proper practices in terms of watering, mowing, fertilizing, and repairing. Next week, dealing with weeds will be hosted by Andrea and Ivana, one of our other yard advisors. Great webinar taking a more comprehensive look at weeds and weed control. Order of operations, you'll be stuck with me again for the majority of that webinar, and we'll be considering less so from a product perspective, more so from a practices perspective, how to incorporate some of these actions with the custom lawn plan. So for example, if you are looking to aerate, when would you do so in relation to your plan? Improving your home landscape, what webinar I drastically need to attend, hosted by a couple of our other yard advisors. And then transition more so back into the lawn care basics and some dealing with weeds and order of operations, but for a cool season lawn. So would love to see you at some of these upcoming webinars. In terms of our team, we are available 7 days a week from 9 to 5 Mountain Time. So we can be reached. The yard advisors are part of the customer support team. So you may reach us at support@getsunday.com. or at our phone number. You can also text us an image if there's a specific question you have regarding your lawn. But if you do have a specific question for a yard advisor, feel free to reach out to us at webinars@getsunday.com, and we'll be sure to respond to any questions. And with that, Andrea, do we have any last minute questions?
Seems like you've covered everything well. Just very much appreciate everybody that joined us today. And also, as you know, because of time, it's impossible to cover everything we want to cover with you today or tonight. So please feel free to join as many webinars as you want. The dealing with weeds, lawn care basics, order of operations, all great resources as a continuation of this initial webinar as part of the entire series. So we definitely look forward to seeing you in those as well.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for attending tonight. As we mentioned, keep an eye out for the follow-up survey, which will be populating right when you head out. This is the Welcome to Sunday webinar. I got that right, Andrea?
You sure did well. It is the Welcome to Sunday webinar.
All right. And then the follow-up email will be sent to you within roughly 24 hours from now. So have a great rest of your night, everyone. Truly appreciate you being here.